Good morning. My name is Christy, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the CA Plex 2E Global User Community Webcast. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question-and-answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you. It is now my pleasure to hand the program over to Mr. Rob Lazaell. Please go ahead.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. So welcome, everyone. It's great to see so many people online. We currently have 52 individual lines connected, and I'm sure on some of those lines there are actually multiple people as well. So a really good turnout, hopefully for some really good content today. We're very excited to be able to share with you, some of the changes that we're undertaking within CA Plex, and hopefully, project some idea of the future, and hopefully your involvement in that as well. So welcome, everyone. So the agenda for today, we are going to have some opening remarks. These presentations are co-organized by our user group presidents, and we have Anne-Marie Armvig from WebCity here today, and there are definitely some other exciting announcements around the user community as well, and so we'd like to share that with you first before we actually get into anything that's just Plex related. So I'm going to be handing this over to Anne-Marie for a couple of remarks. Then we're going to get into the main meat of what we're here to talk about today, the CA Plex strategy and roadmap. So, we want to basically give some background of where we've been over the last couple of releases and hopefully show how that is going to lay the foundation for future development within Plex. So that's, we're going to look at the past, and then we're going to start looking at the future and some of the new functionality we'd like to add and the timeframes for doing that. Then we're going to look at some additional plans and considerations around those releases and how we're actually really going to be looking to actually execute that. So there's going to be a lot about the actual execution and some of the changes around the execution that are hopefully going to accelerate our new development. And all of this really leads into the fact that we are a community, and you need to have a voice in all of this. So, we've made very good strides in terms of how the user community is put together, and the fact that we have these types of meetings is fantastic, but we know that there are some things we can do to take that to the next level. So we're going to be talking about that at the end. And then hopefully we're going to have plenty of time for questions and answers at the end. We have an hour, and I'm hoping that we can make sure that we have some time at the end, because I know when I've actually done some of these presentations at individual user groups throughout Europe and Scandinavia, that there have been quite a lot of questions at the end, and it's been a good chance to actually start some of that dialogue. So that's really our agenda for today. So moving forward, I'm going to hand over to Anne-Marie, who's going to be talking about some of the user group activities and some of the big, really exciting announcements that we've got around this particular space. So Anne-Marie, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Thanks, Rob. Hi, everyone. First of all, don't miss the next webcast if you're also doing 2E and want to see the 2E roadmap. It's just in a few days, right after Easter, and of course I'll be Rory doing that presentation, so don't miss out on that. And then, of course, the big exciting news, I think, is the developer conference we're going to have in November. As you can see on the slide, it's planned for the 3 days in November from the 12th to the 14th. And it's going to be at the CA headquarters, which I find pretty exciting as well, in the New York area in Islandia, which makes it quite easy for people both in Europe and the U.S. to travel to New York. So in line with what we have done before in the last couple of conferences, we're going to have a number of tracks, this year 3 tracks, where we're going to start off as we have done before with workshops and surrounding or around different topics. We're also going to have these tracks of 2 days of how-tos and experiences and what have other people done, the customer cases, updates from both CA and partners and roadmaps, and a lot of ideas of how to proceed, how to do things differently, or news in all of the various products. So much in line with what we have done, and so much has happened since the last conference that I think there's a lot of interesting new material. We're going to talk a lot about mobile solutions, of course. We had some mobile solutions presented, but at the last conference, but there's a lot more about the mobile solutions, about metacode, about the large-scale development, and of course some of the more usual suspects, but the subjects that we have covered for years with change management and web solutions and the development, usual development, CA development. So again, a lot of technical good stuff, a lot of knowledge to pick up around the tools you use, and of course also this occasion to get together with the other users and other experts and discuss how you solve issues and what people are doing now, and of course also catching up with old friends. So a conference in line with what we have done before. And the registration rates or the attendee rates are the early bird rate at $250, and the last minute rate will be $400. So, and this covers, of course, all of the training, the workshop, the presentation, and all of the lunches, and there will be an opening reception and also a conference dinner or event. We're working on that, what it's going to be and what we're going to do, but of course there'll be something as we have always had. The conference rate does not include hotel stays, so you'll have to think about that as well. But there are a lot of hotels in the vicinity, and we are negotiating rates at the moment, conference rates. So there'll be a lot more information about that. But as you can see, the conference website is already up and running, so you can get some of this information to start off. We're putting together the program at the moment, so there's not a program there yet because we haven't even had the official call for papers yet. But that will be out soon. And if you already know what you want to do or have suggestions or you want to present something, please let us know either directly to Patty or Bob or to Christoph and me, and we'll put the program together. Also, we have some sponsor packages, so if you want to be a sponsor of the conference, please also let us know, and we'll see what we can do. So a conference on the way, program being planned at the moment, and we're very excited about that. Other future activities are, of course, more webcasts, which will be in between this next webcast and the conference. We promised you a web option for 2E webcast. I haven't forgotten about that. We just wanted to do this 2E roadmap before because we think that will be what you will be most excited about. But we haven't forgot the other webcasts, the topics we have had requests for. They're still in the program. We just need to plan the dates. So, okay, Rob, that's all for me. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. So, yeah, that's really exciting, and I'm personally very excited to be able to go back to Islandia. You know, I've been there for some internal conferences, and I'm sure it's actually going to be a really exciting place to actually go and, meet with not only the Plex team, but I think other CA people as well. So, fantastic opportunity there. Okay, so let's get straight into the roadmap. So before we kind of get into the roadmap, I think it's good to actually have a breakdown of what the products actually are. I think when people tend to think of the base products, so, that's mainly things like the IDE and the majority of the generators. Now, it used to be that the generators were all separately licensed, and, about 10 years ago, I believe, they were kind of all rolled in together into one pricing strategy. So when most people tend to think of the Plex product, they tend to think of the tool plus the generators, plus some of the other additional tools that are external to the base product, such as Application Integrator, which enables you to bring in, designs maybe from your from your AS400 environment, or even things like your ODBC database schemes that you may have from developed maybe in other tools. But there have actually always been some separate options that have always been separately licensed. One of those is the CA Plex option for 5250, and that enables you to basically generate your Plex client applications as 5250 native green screen applications. So that's always been a separately licensed feature that some of our customers have purchased so that they can develop native green screen applications. One of the other options that was always separate was the CA Plex option for J2EE, and that gave people the ability to generate and build connectors for their Java applications or even for their IBMI applications that can be deployed within a J2EE server. So essentially it enables you to create interfaces to your Plex applications as EJB objects. Now, one of the things we've done is actually we've changed the way that the CA Plex option for J2EE works, and we've actually bundled it with what we call our premium generators. So as we're going to see, we've got some new .NET client functionality, and what we've actually done is we've kind of bundled that in and created this new CA Plex option for enterprise.NET and J2EE. So as we go through and look at Plex 7.0, we'll see that some of the functionality is actually rolled into that particular option. So those are really the three separate product strands, and I think before we actually start to get into look at the product and where it's been and the future, we need to really kind of look at what our strategy is going to be going forward. And really just starting up there from 12 o'clock, and we'll move round. The first one, and I think one of the key things that we've really been trying to focus on in Plex over the last couple of releases, which is going to really continue forward, is about investment protection. So we want to make sure that the product is going to be able to work more reliably, so that there aren't things like inheritance changes, which are going to have to change you're going to have to change your application models in order for them to work correctly. And we want them to be able to be generated predictably and also run in a backwards compatible way. So, as we get into the features from Plex 6.0 upwards, I'm hoping that you're going to start to see there's been a bit more of a theme around the idea of backwards compatibility and some of the things that we've really been working on internally to try and make sure that we can do that. And that's all going to continue. So that's one thing that we really want to try and focus on with Plex, so that you can take new releases, you can deploy new parts of functionality still with some of your existing applications that you've invested in, you've generated and built and deployed within your environment. So very much focused on investment protection. The next one, which I think has kind of taken a bit of a back seat over some of the previous releases, and again I can probably talk to that as we actually go through those slides, is customer-driven enhancements. We have at each release really tried to make sure that we've put in features and put in new parts of runtimes or new model APIs that support our customers' requirements. But I think that going forward is going to become very much a very key focus for us. And, as we talk about some of the methods that we're going to use to really address that, we really are trying to put some things in place to make sure that we keep that as a primary focus. One of the other things we really want to do, and I think that this can kind of sometimes actually be at odds with the idea of customer-driven enhancements, is the idea of being able to extend the reach of the product. So we want to be able to exploit some of the more emerging technologies and application frameworks that are coming around. So if there's something new in the .NET framework, or if there's a new Microsoft platform, maybe like Microsoft Surface, or even around the area of cloud, we want to be able to maybe, actually exploit some of that through our Plex applications, so that we can actually make sure that we give you access to the very latest technologies that can help support the applications that you're developing. One of the other things that really goes into that is the idea of certifying on those platforms as well. So we want to make sure that as new releases of SQL Server come out, or Oracle, or even the IBMI operating system, that we make sure that we stay current on those, and we make sure that we certify and test on them, and we put them into our support compatibility matrix so that they can help support you guys as you deploy your applications. So the way we're going to try and achieve all of this is really through Agile development, and we'll certainly talk about this in a later slide and how that's going to look. But the main idea behind this is really trying to get closer customer collaboration so that we can make sure that the solutions we come up with address your needs and that we can actually get you guys involved at a much earlier point in the cycle than we have previously. The other idea behind this is to really try and accelerate our release cycles as well. I'm hoping that we can get away from this original idea of, 18-month development cycles, followed by a period where we actually have, maybe more like a sustaining engineering cycle to help support the rollout of that release into the field. So we really want to try and reduce those cycles and actually get releases out quicker. All of this is really just to try and make sure that we can improve the quality of the product that we have. I think by making sure that it actually addresses your needs in the field before releasing it, and by getting people involved not just at the beta stage but much earlier than that, that we can also help improve the quality of the deliverables that we produce as well. Okay, so before we look at the future, let's kind of look at the past, and we're not going to go right the way back to Obsidian 3.0, which, I think when we've looked at the roadmaps before, it's been more talking about the past than it's been about the future. So I'm just going to do a quick brief overview of really some of the last releases which I think kind of support some of the strategy items in that previous slide. So Plex 6.0 came out in 2007, and one of the major features of that was really our new .NET Server generator and runtime. It was a completely new language generator for us so that you could generate your database functions, i.e. those that use views, and those that didn't necessarily have a panel. You could basically generate that business logic for C#. And that tends to be the way that we've done previous new language generators. So if you think back to Java, certainly we started with Java Server that connected with JDBC, and we did a very similar thing for .NET as well. One of the other things that we really did that kind of fed into that was the idea of actually trying to change some of our build subsystems to support some of the open standards. So we started to introduce support for ANT and MS Build so that you could start to do things like customized build scripts and have Plex almost start to interact with other development environments. I know that we have some people that take the ANT build scripts and they've modified them so that rather than actually doing the build in Plex, the ANT build process is essentially copying the generated and built source code over into an Eclipse environment so that you can get much better interaction with other third-party development tools, maybe if you're creating things like CM First Web Client applications, for example. One of the other things we introduced was the concept of code libraries, a way to actually model your applications for deployment. And I think as we go forward, you're going to start to see some more things about deployment, and realistically, the code library support that we put in, a way of bundling application units, you're going to start to see those more as deployment artifacts and artifacts that are going to be compiled and deployed into a target environment. So that was really laying the groundwork for those types of features. One of the other common things I think you're going to see is that we've really tried to make sure that at each release we've added some IBMI support. So one of the things we added there was long password support. And we also tried to introduce things like, we always try to have some form of development workflow enhancements, so something to make the developers' lives easier. And one of the major ones there was things like the variable mapping support for API calls and message calls as well, which I know that I use a lot, when I'm doing my development now. So that was Plex 6.0. Plex 6.1, that really came out, again, looking at the pattern here, it's about 18 months to nearly 2 years later that actually went GA. And what we actually tried to do in that release is really build on that .NET Server support. So, the idea of moving to .NET, for us, certainly from the Microsoft standpoint, I think means that we can start to very rapidly adopt Microsoft's more recent technologies. So we added our .NET WCF support, so the ability to essentially model your applications as services and generate and build them as WCF so that they could be deployed as web services or even as some more kind of tightly knit services that might support things like named pipes or TCP/IP. One of the other things we actually did, again from the usability standpoint within Plex and to support some of the workflow within the actual tool, was we added the group model update history so that you could do some rudimentary comments actually when you do an update of a group model, and you could then keep a log of that. And I know that that's proving to be useful for other tools like CA Matchpoint as well. One of the other things we had to do right the way through the tool was actually add IPv6 support, so that's for all of our clients and all of our server runtimes, so that they support IPv6 right the way through. And again, trying to talk to this backwards compatibility standpoint, so we've really tried to make sure that our last runtime that was not really backwards compatible, we tried to come up with a strategy to make sure that you could take the new release of Plex 6.1 and run it over a Plex 6.0 application. And our WinC when NTC runtime was really the last one that was not properly backwards compatible. The way we've really tried to address that is essentially by having to stabilize that runtime and not actually do much in the way of new development there. There are some things that we can add. There are some other things that we can't. For example, we can't support a newer version of MFC because they are, even if they're statically or dynamically linked, we would have to recompile the entire runtime. So we've stabilized that runtime. We've come up with a strategy for how we do the fixes in it, and that's one thing that we definitely test every time we come out with a new release of Plex. One of the things that we did actually add to the WinC runtime and the WinNTC runtime for that release was our Windows Vista support. So we changed the way that the product was installed, we changed the way that it looks for configuration files, and we changed the way that it works with the Universal Access Control, or UAC control, in Windows Vista. And then finally, we're always trying to look to put things into Plex API to make some of you more advanced developers and the power developers lives a little bit easier when you're developing external tools. So we added safe array support and object browser macros so that you could right-click and you could pass maybe the selected list of objects into an add-in that you've written, so that you could actually do some quite definite actions actually against those particular objects in the object browser. So that was Plex 6.1. Then we came out with Plex 7.0, and again, looking at the timeline, it looks very similar. It's about an 18-month cycle. And we introduced our Unicode support for the IBM i platform. That was a very big feature that we added. And then we really added a lot of things to kind of try and support some of the migration efforts that we knew our customers were undergoing. So we had the packager tool that we introduced, which enables you to add package model information to your applications rather than having to manually add it. We kind of did the converse of the WCF generator as well, and we added what we call web service import, so the ability to take a WSDL and import it into the Plex environment and actually then call those web service operations as if they were Plex functions. And again, we've had to support just individual languages for that because of the amount of work involved, and the first language we've really supported is C#. So if you've got your Plex action diagrams, you can actually call WCF services, or you can call a service of any type actually from your Plex action diagram code. You can generate that function as C#, and it will actually make the call correctly. Going forward, we'd like to support other platforms, other languages, so hopefully we'll see that in a later slide. One of the other things we've introduced is WCF proxy as well, which is essentially a new way of hosting our .NET runtime. One of the reasons we introduced that is because we see that going forward on the Microsoft platform, certainly, we're not really going to be having things like Windows services or even necessarily IIS. I think things are going to be working much more in the frame of things like application fabrics. And certainly by us moving to WCF proxy, it's going to give us that ability. Again, trying to look at things like user requests. We had a lot of requests to replace the ProtoView Java Beans controls, and so that's another thing that we actually did. We actually wrote our own versions of those Java Beans and supported them within our shipped active library. Then realistically, though it's the last thing on the slide, it was really the big ticket item at the Plex 7.0 release. And we took our .NET generator and we really took it to the next level by being able to actually generate your client functions for .NET. So you can now generate panel functions, and they generate as Windows Presentation Foundation applications, and you can start to take advantage of some of the benefits of moving to .NET on the client, such as runtime backwards compatibility, ease of application customization, simplified application deployment, and some of those other really cool features. As we've been going through all of these releases, although it looks like there's a long time between those releases, we've also been putting out a lot of PTF releases and what we call published PTF releases. So, between Plex 6.1 and 7.0, we published over 530 fixes, and those were regularly scheduled PTF builds. And in some cases, they actually related to new functionality that was added. So we have things like the WinC failover switching, so that you could actually dynamically switch server instances if one of your server connections went down. So in some cases, we've been trying to roll out new features as we've gone along, but it's been almost in a very ad hoc way, and we haven't really had kind of structured releases around it. So that's really where we've come from, and now I think what we need to do is really look to the future. Where are we actually going to be going from here? Well, at the moment, what we've tried to do is we've tried to basically take things from what we call our DAR wish list backlog. I know many of you will have actually raised support enhancement requests, and we call those DARs internally within CA. And so those will be raised with customer support. They will be passed through to our product analyst, and our product analyst will basically go through those on a monthly basis, and we will review them as a team, and then they'll go into something called our wish list. So actually the majority of the things that you see here have actually come from our DAR wish list. Now in some cases we've actually had multiple customers request the same thing, and the way that we've actually seen that is really that it's more like a DAR wish list item that's just had a +1 vote on it. So what we've tried to do is really pick some of those top items that customers have requested over the last 5 or 6 years, and we've tried to really structure those around some release cycles. Now, it's not that this is going to be the final list, and certainly, things are always subject to change, and I'm sure that there are going to be some features that we might hear about in the questions and answer session that aren't listed here. So, I think that what we want to try and do is we definitely want to try and take your feedback and your input and actually make sure that we can structure those releases correctly. Now, the things that we're currently working on are really listed over there on the left-hand side in green. And what we actually tried to do when we came up with those top list of items to actually put into that release, our product manager actually sent out a voting list, and you guys actually voted on it. So this is really where this list of items has actually come from, and that's how we've really tried to prioritize those items. So looking at really what we're currently working on and what we're going to be working on through this current calendar year, this is really just for the base product as well. So obviously, we were talking earlier about the CA Plex option for enterprise.net, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to basically put a separate roadmap but parallel to the main base product, and actually have features that, if you invest in .NET clients, if you invest in the CA Plex option for enterprise.net, that you can see the strategy for that as a separate option as well. Now, the release schedules are going to be the same, but at the same time, we wanted to make sure that there was, that wasn't just something which was released and now we're going to refocus on something else. We wanted to make sure that, we know that the Microsoft landscape is changing, that your client requirements are changing, so we have a separate parallel roadmap with this current one, which I'll be going through as well. So based around calendar year 2013, you can see that we have a number of tool enhancements here. Number one, really, with the bullet on the tool side, was really the local model configuration profiles. So that's the idea of being able to take your variants, your language, and your level and versions that you've set for all of your host model and all of your attached libraries, and being able to create a snapshot of that which will probably be stored with a group model so that other developers actually have access to those configurations as well, and so that they can just be recalled by selecting a drop-down. And again, there are a load of other things that might go in with that, like support for Plex API, so that you can open up a local model and automatically set a configuration for generating it. So that's really one of the main things we're putting on the tool side. Then on the runtime side, the other thing that was really the #1 request on the runtime side was IBM Kerberos single sign-on support. And so that's something that we are looking to implement this year as well. On the runtime side, we have our WCF proxy hosting, which we introduced at Plex 7.0, and the next logical step for that is being able to actually host those WCF runtimes actually in Windows Azure as well, so that then we can actually host Plex applications in the cloud. So it's just really going to be a slight change to that, and we really see those changes as being incremental to kind of slowly start to support some of the more advanced Microsoft infrastructure changes that are coming down the pipeline. One of the other things that's been a very big focus for us internally has been improving our QA process. And to improve the QA process, we really have to look at automation. And one of the things that's been problematic with testing Plex applications has been the fact it's been difficult to get Plex applications to work with automated testing tools because of the fact that individual controls on a panel, their identifiers may not stay consistent between generations of functions. So we've added some new functionality into both the tool and to the generators for our C++ generators so that we can actually allocate fixed control IDs for controls. And then that means that when you actually write scripts that work over those applications, they can reference the same control reliably, and they always know that they're going to be contacting and connecting with the same button, irrespective of whether you move it on the user interface or you change the text associated with it, or even if you change some of the other name attributes associated with it. So that's another thing we're introducing. Again, we're always trying to push Plex API forward and add new functionality to that that's going to be useful. So for those of you that are that use Plex API, we're adding the ability to enumerate object types such as fields, variables, functions, and panels. So you can actually get an enumerator that contains all of those types rather than accessing them statically. And then the other thing we're doing is the export action diagrams feature. So this is a way to actually resolve action diagrams and actually export them. And one of the reasons for being able to provide that is so that you can actually then start comparing action diagrams between releases of Plex to make sure that there's no changes to your action diagram logic. Or if you want to see the effect of actually changing maybe some of your inheritance or some of your standards layers, you can actually start to look at what that resolved action diagram code is going to look like as a result of that change. So that's going to be a very useful feature we feel going forward to look at things like impact analysis. The next thing we're going to do is very simple, just WinC and WinNTC dynamic link library versioning. We kind of have that for our other runtimes for Java and for C# through our code library support, but we're going to look to add that natively for the binaries that you can produce for Plex WinC and WinNTC functions. One of the other runtime things that was really #1 was the supporting different key code combinations other than alphanumeric keys. So that maybe being able to use the tilde or the equal sign with combinations like Control and Alt. And that's something which is very high on people's requirement list. And then finally, on the Java side, just something small for the Java runtime, and that's the ability to actually spawn a separate process and launch a separate Plex function on a separate thread of execution within a Java runtime. So that's really what we've got that we're trying to focus on for calendar year 2013. And then moving forward, there's another set of enhancements for calendar year 2014. So on the tool side, there are things like we've got some changes that we want to make to the object browser to make it more usable. So the filter that we currently have in there, it's great, but at the same time, when you look at the drop-down, it's only for your current Plex session. If you close your instance of Plex, and reopen it, that history is lost, so we want to put that in there. The other thing we want to do is actually have configurable object load limits as well. We know that we used to have a limit of I think it was 10,000 objects, and then that was actually removed, and we found that for certain customers, if they maybe filter on unscoped objects, that it won't actually load all of those objects because there's too many. So we want to actually have a configurable load limit in there for the object browser to make sure that it works and works in a way that is it works with relatively good performance as well. On the model editor side, there are a lot of usability enhancements that customers have requested over the years, and some of the main ones there are improved navigation keyboard shortcuts. I know I'm one of the people that tends to just use their mouse within the model editor, and you know, I haven't really used keyboard shortcuts because of the fact that they aren't really consistent. But I know that some of you do, and so we're going to look to how we can actually make that whole process a lot more usable. And then also for doing things like keyboard shortcuts for continuation triple editing and adding. I know that at the moment, again, I use the drag and drop for that all the time, but you know, there should be some way that we can actually improve that through keyboard shortcuts. On the message log side, things to be able to navigate to particular messages. So maybe if you double click on a message to show it, there might be up and down buttons so you can move between messages. And definitely a lot more in the way of export options. At the moment, the message log exports in a proprietary format. And that's actually, you know, it would be good if we could export that in an XML format or even just a plain text format. We also want to enhance the way that things like the code library wizard and the packager tool work, make them much more integrated with the actual product itself. At the moment, they're very much standalone tools that you use, but it'd be great if the code library wizard or if the code library options were more integrated with the generate and build window. And also things like the packager tool, if that basically just ran as if it was allocating an implementation name for a function. So I think going forward, you can start to see those types of tools actually be integrated much more within the Plex development environment. On the runtime side, we've got things like enhanced state sensitivity for certain controls. So flyover hint text has never classically been state sensitive, and we want to make sure that's the case. And also things like the tab stop as well. So if you make if you change a control to be protected, the tab stop functionality will be modified based on those settings so that you can actually make sure that you don't actually tab through fields that are set to protected. So there are going to be some state changes to certain controls and certain properties within those controls. We want to update the Windows placement APIs as well. So there are going to be APIs for things like being able to reset those settings, maybe on an individual panel basis or for the Windows as a whole. We've actually done that for our .NET client, but we want to make sure that we add similar functionality into our other client runtimes as well. The other thing which I talked about earlier was the fact that our web service import currently only works for C#. We want to make sure that we can support that for our other generators as well. And I think the focus there is really going to be on Java and for RPG as well. So you're going to be able to call your web services from hopefully your Java generated and your RPG generated functions. Again, on the RPG4 side, we want to add proper varchar support. I know that's one thing that's been, you know, now that we've actually got RPG4 support and we actually have a native generator for RPG4, we really want to start trying to actually exploit that and exploit some of the features that it will actually give us above our current RPG3 support. So those are the items for the base products. And again, like I said, we've tried to basically take the tack that we want to make sure that people that invest in .NET Client, that we actually have a roadmap and actually show where we're going to be going with this. The things that we're currently working on for calendar year 2013, again, number one was really ActiveX control hosting. So the ability to, our customers really, although we have a one-to-one mapping between our standard controls, things like edit boxes, buttons, events, NDI windows, frame parents, frame child patterns, one thing was really missing, and that was the ActiveX control support. I know that many users rely on things like crystal reports, they rely on things like code job controls, And what we wanted to try and do was make sure that we supported those to actually ease the migration path for our existing customers. That's really been one of the main sticking points for customers that have really looked at this technology. They like it, but at the same time, they see the migration overhead as being too big, because right up front they have to think about what they're going to replace those ActiveX controls actually with. So we're going to introduce that, within the next calendar year. The other thing that we're looking to do is implement click once deployments. You can currently use click once. I've given a demo of this to a number of customers, and they've really liked it, but at the same time you have to kind of go into Visual Studio and you have to learn how to do everything in Visual Studio. It would be much better if that was built off the back of our code library support, so that code libraries then become those application units which you can deploy through click once. So we're looking to actually implement that. One of the other things that's really key with .NET is the ability to build resources into satellite assemblies. So you can actually have localized versions of resources that reside maybe in one for German, one for French, one for Japanese, and then with a runtime switch you can switch between them. So we're looking to enhance our localization support by being able to generate each of those languages automatically when we generate a function, and then compile those satellite resources as we go. And that's going to ease the localization, change language configurations, and you don't have to regenerate and build absolutely everything just to get those language resources out. So a very cool enhancement there, and one that maybe we might even look to be able to support on other platforms as well. Again, looking at testing tool support is very key for us to be able to do automated testing and do it well. And one of the things we really need on the C# side, again, on the client, is to be able to reference individual controls by unique name. Now, it's slightly different for C# than it's going to be for our C++ solution, because we have XAML files which can contain very human-readable names. So we've actually come up with a very cool technology there where we can actually uniquely identify individual controls by names, and it makes writing your automated testing much nicer for C#. So hopefully some very cool functionality there. And then going through this, there are going to be a lot more, but there are basically some enhanced build options. So, some of the things we get for free with C# really the ability to support splash screens when we create executables. So that's one of those types of options. There are going to be examples of others as well, but certainly that's one of the main ones to support splash screens natively. Then going into calendar year 2014, these are some of the things which are definitely, on our radar, and it will certainly be good as people start to adopt .NET to actually get their feedback as to what we should do here. But we want to enhance some of the native controls that we actually have within .NET clients. So we can start to support things like slider controls and HTML controls natively, so that you can render HTML straight within a Plex panel. One of the other things that we're looking to do is support XAML browser applications. So they're almost going to be a little bit more like Java applets that run within a browser. They definitely have more of a web-based navigation. They're not proper full web applications because they are downloaded to run on the client. But certainly we have done some investigation in that space, and if you need to support browsers, that could be one way to do it. One of the other things that we get with generating to XAML is maybe the ability to actually support other different form factors as well. So one of the other things we're looking to do is support WinRT, or what was formerly called Metro applications. So, again, those type of WinRT applications can either be based on HTML5 or based on XAML and .NET. So we're hoping that we can actually modify our XAML that gets generated so that we can support WinRT and support more touch-based interfaces. Finally, one of the other things that really builds on our ActiveX control hosting that we're looking to do this year is the ability to support .NET components natively. So the idea of being able to import those into your Plex development environment and actually start using those controls. I know that companies like Infodristics they actually came from a background maybe of using supporting ActiveX controls, and now they're creating very much WPF-rich controls. And I think that what we can do is we can actually start importing those into the Plex environment and start using them. And again, it's really just going to be a new type of control container that we actually have within panels to enable us to interact with those control types. So those are really the two roadmaps. So how are we looking to actually execute this? And as we alluded to at the start, we really want to use Agile for doing this. You know, I think one of the reasons that we're looking to use Agile is the fact that we really have a good precedence that we're going to be following here with the 2E 8.6 project that was completed last year. That was deemed to be a great success. You know, they followed Agile throughout the development process, although they did have a beta at the end of it. And so we're really going to be following that kind of model of actually doing Agile development and getting customers actually involved in this much earlier. We want to make sure that we get customers involved early and often, and you know, there are set meetings that we will hopefully invite customers to. And you know, I've already heard from a lot of customers that are interested in many of those features that were mentioned on the previous slides. And if any of them took your interest and you haven't contacted myself yet, then please, you know, just let me know, or let Bob Pushis, the VP of our development, know as well, because we'll be more than happy to start looking at signing you up. We'll get into that whole process as we go through some of these other slides. One of the reasons we want that heavy collaboration to start with is that we want to make sure that the deliverables we come up with are correct and address your needs early. So rather than just kind of having a 9-month development cycle and then releasing an alpha or a beta, which, you know, you're too busy to actually get to test, we want to release it to you early and often so that you can actually have drop builds that you can actually work with. We're hoping that all of this gets to actually shorten our beta cycle. We are looking to have a beta for our next release because it's our first Agile project. We kind of see that as being our training wheels to make sure that we've got this process right. But hopefully going forward, we might be able to have those even shorter or even remove them altogether. So the way that we're really looking to do that collaboration is really through having pre-release features reviewed by customers on a monthly basis in something that we're going to call end-of-sprint reviews. And like I said, you know, please contact either Bob or myself, and you know, if you're interested, and we can put your names down, and once we actually have the framework in place for signing customers up, we will let you know. So the Scrum methodology really enables us to hopefully put sprint cycles around the development of our features. All of those things that we just discussed in the previous slides, things for calendar year 2013 and 2014, we're putting those into a product backlog. And what we then do is we actually plan our release, and we go through those backlog items and we groom them. We estimate how long they're going to take. And then we basically plan out how we're actually going to deliver those through a series of sprints. Those sprints, what we do is we actually take in items from the product backlog that we think that we can complete in that sprint. And for us, a sprint is going to be 4 weeks. I know that for many projects it's actually shorter than that. But for us, you know, this seemed to be a good best practice that worked for the 2E team, and I think it will work for us as well. So the work that we do is meant to be very self-contained. What we want to actually try and end up with at the end of the sprint, and it might not be for the first sprint, but hopefully maybe by the second one onwards, we actually have deliverables that are available to actually give to people at the end of that sprint. And all of the work, rather than the way it's been done in the past, where development go into a spin cycle and actually do all of their work and do their unit testing and then hand it over to QA, this is going to be much more collaborative. So things like the dev, QA, and doc are all going to be done together at the same time during the sprint. Then at the end of that sprint, what we end up with is hopefully a deliverable that we can supply to customer stakeholders for them to actually review those features, and hopefully even by being able to give them a copy actually of that functionality that they can install and they can actually start using in their environment. So, that will actually be pre-beta code, so it won't be supported necessarily, as in the traditional sense, through our support mechanism. And, it shouldn't be something that you use in a production environment, maybe if it's a runtime feature. But at the same time, you get early access to that, like a community technology preview or an alpha build. We will have a full beta at the end, but again, like I said, hopefully it will actually be much shorter. So that's realistically the kind of main overview. There were some of the meetings that I skipped over there that, only us as Scrum team members will be interested in, or some of our internal stakeholders will be interested in. But certainly we want to see the end of those sprints and having the customer involvement so that we can actually get validation on some of these features on a very regular basis. Now, even if you're not involved with those things on a monthly basis, if you're not interested in one of those particular features, there are some other features that you're interested in, though. They weren't mentioned on those slides. You think there might be a DAR about them, but you're not sure. What can you actually do? Well, we have this great community, and, we're definitely trying to have these regular technical webcasts now. We're trying to schedule them on a much more regular basis. So that just enables you to find out about these new features, but also there might be things that you're not finding out about. And that's where the user community comes in. Definitely post. If you've got any ideas for things that you want to hear about, post them on the wall. And again, on those previous slides, there might be some things that weren't mentioned. I think probably the main one that I will probably end up talking about in the Q&A session is things like SQL support on RPG. Well, actually, when I looked at the DARs, that wasn't actually listed as one of the main things. So I think now with the idea of actually introducing the idea wall and making sure that we can foster the idea wall, you guys can start to actually enter those items and start voting on them. So if you look at the idea wall and your idea isn't there, feel free to post it and get other people to vote on it, because only today I was actually seeing that on the community forums someone was saying, well, if you want this, it's out there, go and vote on it. So we definitely need to try and foster that. And again, some of those deliverables can change based on what's going to be in the idea wall, the amount of votes, and that can affect our product backlog. So that's just a bit of a plug there for some of the ways that we're actually trying to collaborate with you guys. And again, if you were the one that originally posted that idea on the idea wall, maybe you'll end up being involved actually with the development of that particular feature as well. So in summary, we had an overview there of some of the exciting things that are happening within our user community, and the fact that we are going to be having the next conference at our CA Technologies headquarters. We had an overview of where we currently see the product, where it currently stands, and also what we're actually planning over the next coming calendar years. So that's actually a 2-year roadmap that we saw there. We're hopefully having those release cycles at much smaller chunks of time. We want to try and break these backlog items down and actually get those release cycles coming out hopefully much quicker. We always welcome your feedback. The primary person was really Patty Bowman, our product manager. She's currently out on short-term disability at the moment, so feel free to contact either Bob or myself. Our emails are up there. And, in her absence, we can definitely try and take care of you. Maybe Bob more on the product management related type activities, and I'm always going to be here for more kind of general Plex-related issues and comments about this particular roadmap. And again, just the link for our user community. We're here as a community. We need to try and all get involved with this and work out where we want the product to go. And hopefully, we've got the framework in place for you guys and your voices to actually be heard. So that's really it for the roadmap items. So, hopefully we've given some very definite things there that we're actually looking to achieve with the product and the way that we're actually looking to do that. So at this point, I know we've only really got 5 minutes left. I'm more than happy to stay longer than that if, the questions carry on. But at this time, I would like to open it up for general questions and comments.
As a reminder, if you wish to ask an audio question, please press *1 on your telephone keypad. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, that's *1 to ask a question.
Hey, Rob, while we're waiting for questions, why don't you back up to the slide that has our email addresses in case someone's trying to reach out to us and wasn't able to copy it down.
That's a good point. Thank you, Bob. I will do that now.